Welcome back. This is week 4 of my HIFAWIP journal where I tell you how I feel about what I played. If you didn't watch last week's video, it was probably my best yet, but it did come a little late. But I'm back on schedule this week, so hopefully this will be out Sunday at 10 a.m. on July 6th, I think it will be. Anyways, this week I'm not starting with Xenoblade like I typically do because I don't have an update. I completely spaced out playing it this week, but I am still interested. It'll be back next week. And I also did mention last week that I had some interesting things planned to maybe play, and that also didn't happen. I had plans to mod Benjamin's Wii U, which did happen, but we wanted to play a specific game together, which I'm not going to name because I still do hope that it happens at some point. But the Pretendo servers, which is like the substitute online function that we're using, were down after we finished the mod, and so we just kind of lost interest after that and didn't end up trying it out. But here's a picture that he took of me while I was modding, and I was super locked in. That's kind of all that came from it, though. So without that or the Xenoblade, I will skip right into the segment about me playing Fortnite with my father. Last week he complained that I misrepresented him, and so this week I'm officially renaming the segment to Carrying My Dad in Fortnite instead of just playing Fortnite with my father. We started this session with a little bit of Blitz Royale again, and it didn't really last very long because last week was Avatar week, which I have no problem with Avatar, but I do have a problem with the waterbending mythic that was the main range weapon of choice during these sessions. I absolutely hated this item during Chapter 5 Season 2, and I have so much that I can say about it, but I will end up talking about Chapter 5 some other time, and I will talk about it then, and not carry on about it now. But just know it's probably genuinely my most hated Fortnite item of all time. We didn't get any wins in Blitz, but we did end up going 3 out of 4 in our Battle Royale matches. Only 4 matches because our session wasn't very long, but we only lost 1 time. And I'd argue that was due to my shitty drop and then me not paying attention when I was getting rebooted, because I could have bought the upgraded reboot and had weapons to fight, but then I didn't, and we died. But 3 out of 4 isn't bad. Part of the reason that I make such an effort to play Fortnite or some other game with my dad on every Sunday is because he was incredibly influential to my love for gaming as a kid. He started me out on the GameCube when I think I was no more than 5 years old. I could be wrong about that. But my first game that I ever played was Super Smash Bros. Melee. First of all, incredible first game to play, but that sort of like competitiveness and my interactions with him through it were honestly what made me fall in love with gaming for the first time. He also works in IT, which means that he always had spare parts growing up, and there was always a spare computer that I could game on growing up, which is why I'm able to be a PC gamer now. My computer is still mostly made up of spare parts from his machines over the years, if not just parts that he's upgraded for me. Even though obviously he was the main reason that I game now, my parents were pretty strict about my gaming as a kid, so I would spend a fair amount of time watching him play rather than playing games myself. And one of the games that I'd watch him play the most was the Portal series, which Portal 2 is now my favorite game of all time. One of the first times that I watched him play Portal 2 specifically was a year when both of us were sick for the 4th of July, and so we ended up staying home from our family party, and I sat behind him at his desk and watched him play through a pretty large portion of the game, and I was super intrigued. He wouldn't let me play it until I was like 12, I think, but I have loved it ever since. Since it was the 4th of July and I didn't have plans, I decided to play it. So I sprinted through the first maybe 2/3, maybe half of the game in just a couple hours. It didn't really take very long because I've played it so many times that I remember the puzzles like the back of my hand. And honestly, this is the rare game where I feel like I like it too much to have anything of note to say about it, really. You know, it has great puzzles, it has great characters, I really like the way it makes you think. It's still really pretty despite being over a decade old. It's a source game, so don't alt-tab when you play it. Oh, and I own 5 copies of it for consoles that I don't own. Anyways, since I don't have much to say about it, here's my entire session from yesterday. The final game this week is a pretty new indie game called Peak, which is a game about climbing. I've done a couple runs with friends, but the one that I got footage of is from playing with my cousin. We both kind of sucked at the game, so we didn't get very far. It's a really fun title and honestly pretty well designed, but it's one of those games that's kind of carried by it being a social experience. It does have really good support, and they release a new mountain to climb every single day. So I hope that it kind of keeps it alive. It is pretty brutal though. On the base difficulty, I still haven't completed an entire run, despite trying 4 different times at least, I believe. I was the last one alive when I was playing with my friends, but I did burn to death in the center of a volcano. Anyways, like I said, it's enjoyable, but I'm not in love with it like I am most of the games that I spend egregious amounts of time playing. I'll probably mention it or share a clip or 2 in the future, but it probably won't have its own segment again. That's kind of it for this week. I didn't play a ton of stuff. I ended up going to like a comic book store earlier in the week. Me and Benjamin tried finding him a 3DS again before we modded his Wii U, and didn't have much luck there. I've got family in town, so I've been like going outside and stuff. This week, instead of commenting first on the video like this guy did, maybe comment a game that you recommend or want to request that I play. Not that I have like a shortage of games to play. I'm just begging for engagement. I'll see you again next week.
There's another backpack over here.
Is in the third one?
Make yourself fucking useful, yeah.
Hey!
Hi.
You should be nicer to me.
Says who?
Says this dude rubbing on your face.